Hi guys, welcome to this video about the basics of HTML. I'm Richard and I'm a web developer. I wanted to give you guys a beginner's guide to HTML, what it is and how we can build websites with it. So if you guys are ready, get yourself a cup of tea and we'll get into the video. What is HTML? HTML is one of 3 components that we can use to make websites as a front-end developer. Now your browser can only read 3 languages to make websites. That is HTML, CSS and JavaScript. Now although HTML is not a programming language, as some people will say, it's a markdown language, you can't build a website without it. So what's the difference between HTML, CSS and JavaScript? Imagine a house. HTML is that house. It has windows, a door, a roof. It has all those components that you need to build a house. It's the building bricks of our website. Now CSS is the styling of our website. So going back to the house analogy, it's maybe what color is our house, how big our windows and door are, and what kind of pattern the carpet has. That's what CSS does. So it takes the elements that HTML has put on our page and changes them, makes them style differently, sizes, things like that. But we can't style them without having HTML elements in the first place. So that's why HTML are the building blocks. And then we have JavaScript. So JavaScript creates interactivity on our website. So imagine you have an automatic door that when you get close to it, it opens for you. Or maybe you have one of those thermostats that has an app and you can change the temperature. That's what JavaScript is. It creates programmatic functions to do things on your website. Okay, so let's have a look at some websites and their code and see what we can work out from them. So oneapple.com here. Very clean, very nice website, as you would expect. And if I right click on some things, I can inspect those elements. I'm in Safari here, but you can do this in Chrome, Firefox. My preferred browser to code in is Chrome, but there's a few things that makes it easy just for this demonstration for you guys. So let's click on, let's click on this iMac here, this Word iMac. Inspect. Just pull this across to the side here. Just make this font a little bit bigger. You can see all these elements here. So div, class, product name, all this stuff, right? P, class, typography, hero. And you can see as I hover over them, it selects certain things on the left here. So where it says 27-inch model here, this is span, class, and it has all this writing here, right? So this is the DOM tree, and I'm going to open and close some of these because you see how they're this is what we call a tree, so they're kind of inset into each other. So we're basically going from this big section element that you can see actually encapsulates everything on the left hand side here. If I drag this in a little bit more, I'll just get that back for me. So you can see the section encapsulates all of it. Then I can actually go down and go section content, which encapsulates a little bit more. There's blue and orange. Then again, we're going down, and this is kind of going through the sections and getting more specific and more specific as we kind of go into this DOM tree, right? So this is what we're going to be writing. This is HTML. And same on Wikipedia here. So if I give this a inspect, and you can see again, the same sort of situation happens here. We've got these P tags. You can see these B tags, I tags. So Wikipedia is more like a text-based website, so there's not as much styling going on here. So this could be a little bit closer to what we're going to do, because we're not going to do CSS in this video. But you can see all the HTML, and you can carry on going into them. So it has that same structure where we're going into an element and into an element and further into an element, as you can see. Now, so let's see what happens when I disable the CSS on this website. So I can just go to develop menu up at the top, because I've added this in Safari, disable styles. And you can see right now, it actually has everything still, but it doesn't look as pretty as it used to be. And this is because it's now using a default style to the browser because we haven't told it to do anything different with our CSS. So this is the building blocks. This is HTML at its rawest. And we can do that with the Apple website as well. You can see this is the Apple website. It doesn't look anywhere near as pretty if I turn these back on as it did before, right? So this is what CSS gives us. You can't today use HTML without using CSS. It's just, you wouldn't get anywhere. So you learn the basics of HTML first, then jump into CSS. And that's what we'll be doing here, HTML, and in a later video, CSS. So how do we write HTML? So there's different types of HTML elements, from text elements, layout elements, form elements, media elements. So let's just pick one. Let's pick a heading tag that we would usually use for a big title on a website. Okay, so we start with a triangular bracket followed by H1, and we're going to close that first tag with another triangle bracket. And H1 is the biggest heading tag we can do. Then we can follow it with our actual title, what we want to write in there. Then we need to close that heading up altogether. So it's similar to how we started it, triangle bracket, but this time we put a slash in there, a forward slash, H1, and then the closing triangle bracket. And that's our first bit of HTML we've got written. And this is pretty much how HTML is written. We have an opening tag and a closing tag. There are a couple of tags that don't follow this, when they don't have the closing tag bit. But no need to worry about those just yet. There's only a couple and they're pretty easy to remember what they are, to be honest. So let's have a look at some more common tags. So we actually have H1 to H6, and as default, H1 is the largest and H6 is the smallest. But you can actually change these with CSS. You can make H2 bigger than H1. Basically, the reasoning behind this is H1 has a better hierarchy, it's more importance. So for things like Google, who's trying to read your website and work out what sections are important and how to rank you and things like that, it understands this H1 being more important than H2. So if that's the case on your website, you've probably got that as a larger font size. Okay, so what are some more common tags that we can use on our website? We have our paragraph tags, which is P in our triangle brackets. That's used for default text on our websites. We also have anchor tags, or A tags. They are for links on our website, so linking to other websites, linking to pages within our website. Also, we have tags like image tags, so we can put images on our website. I'll leave a link to sort of an exhaustive list of HTML tags in the description, so if you want to go check those out, you can do that after the video. So now that we have a bit more understanding about HTML, what it is, how it looks, how it structures, why don't we jump into the code and just start writing some HTML? First, we need to get an IDE so we can write some code. Some people also call this a text editor. We can actually use Notepad on Windows or TextEdit on Mac, and we can save them as HTML files, and that will be fine and they'll work exactly as you'd expect. However, most IDEs are free, and it gives us some nice extensions we can use, and also some like text highlighting and just nice environment so we can actually write code efficiently. So we should get a proper IDE for that reason alone, right? So my preference is Visual Studio Code by Microsoft. It's a free one again. Feel free to try out some more if you want. There's lots of really good IDEs out there. This is just my preference. So if you want to go to code.visualstudio.com if you want to get Visual Studio Code like me, and you can just download the app here. Okay, so now we have Visual Studio Code downloaded and installed. We're just going to create a folder just to hold our website. This can be anywhere, just somewhere you can easily get to. I'm going to call mine HTML Basics. and we can drag that over our Visual Studio Code icon, and that will open up our Visual Studio Code. And you can see I have this welcome screen. I can just close that. Also, you can also go to File, Open, and that will open the folder as well in Visual Studio Code. So the first thing we need to do is we need to create an index file. So if I go to New File, I'm going to say index.html. Index is a very common file that tells our server, our website, which file to actually load. So when we go to our domain, it will look for the index file first. So we're calling it index.html because this is our first page. So right, let's start writing some code. The first thing we need to write is our HTML tag. So triangle brackets HTML, triangle brackets, and you can see that Visual Studio Code has automatically added the closing brackets for me. If it hasn't done that for you, remember triangle bracket / HTML closing brackets. Right, so I'm just going to give some space in between them two. Now the next thing we're going to add, there's two main elements that live inside HTML. So remember the tree structure, and that is our head tag. There we go, closing tag, and also body tag. Now, the difference between these two tags is head is all the kind of meta stuff about the website. So all the kind of instructions that are hidden from the client mostly. Maybe we have to pull some files into the website to use them as well. The title lives in here. So the title that lives in your tab on your browser, that will live in here also. And description things for Google. So things that Google needs to be able to list your page properly on its search engine. So that's what head is for. Nothing is really displayed on the page with head. I guess you can say the title is if it's in tab, but actually on the page it's not. Body is the opposite. So body is things we will see on the page. So like we discussed our H1, our link tags, our image tags. So that's where that stuff lives. Okay, so let's create our H1 title first. So like before, we do our H1 tag, and then we can just type our title. Awesome blog about blogging. So meta. Okay, so that is now our title. And we can go check this out in our browser. So if we save this, so go back to your folder that you had your index.html file in, or what should have now your index.html file. There it goes. And we could just drag it into, let's drag it into Chrome. There you go. Awesome blog about blogging, so meta. And if we right click that and inspect, we can see H1 exactly as we had it. HTML, head tags, body with a H1 inside it. Perfect. Right. So let's get on to the next thing. So I'm just going to close this sidebar here, this Explorer bar, with Command B for Mac or Control B for Windows. Just gives us a bit more space. And I'm going to drag this in a little bit here, just so we can drag our page out, just so we can see them a bit more clearly. So there we go. Our website is on the right now, and our code is on the left. Okay, perfect. So I'm going to drop under the H1 and create a paragraph tag, and I'm going to write something in here. So this is our awesome blog. We hope you enjoy all the amazing information you will read. Okay, then we're going to capitalize our first letter. And as you can see, I've saved it now, but it hasn't changed here. So we actually need to manually refresh this. So Command R, I think Control R for Windows would do it. There you go. We've got our smaller text underneath now. Okay, just zoom in a little bit here for you guys, so you can see. Perfect. Right. So now we have this. Let's add an image. Okay, so why don't we use a polar bear image from the Wikipedia article earlier? So I'm just going to go to Wikipedia. I'm going to right click, save image as, and then I can save it in the same folder that my index.html file is. I'm just going to call it bear and save. So now actually, if we open up that bar on the left hand side again, which is this top left one, or Control B or Command B on Mac, we can see the bear.jpg is living in here. So now, how do we add an image? So I'm just going to go back to our blog and again shrink it a little bit more, just so we can see a little bit more code. So to add an image tag, we do the img. Now this is one of those tags that's a little bit different, because we're not closing it like this, as we would do. Oops. That was Visual Studio Code trying to help me there. So we're not closing it like we would and putting the image in here, like bear.jpg. That's not how it works. Bear.jog. The way image tags work is you need to give it an attribute. So you need to give it a source attribute, and that source attribute would be bear.jpg. Then close it, and it's self-closing. We put the / here. Look. And actually nowadays you can get away with not having that / at all. But I just do it for good practice. So if I save that, we go over to our page and refresh. That's our polar bear, he's there. So that's our first example of an attribute. So there's other attributes we can have, which is alt equals polar bear. This is one of them. Polar bear. And basically this is for people who are visually impaired. So they might use screen readers that talk out the page to them. And obviously you can't really talk out an image. So you can actually, in the alt tag, you can say what the image is. So description text. Also, if the image fails to load, you will see this text. So if you've ever had a website where the images are broken and you can see some writing where the image is with a little broken icon, it comes from this alt text basically. Okay, so when we're coming to write these attributes, you notice we're using double quotes. We can also use single quotes, it doesn't matter. For me, habit using double quotes in HTML is what I go for. Let's now create our subheading. So we're going to create a H2 element. I'm going to say, this is Billy. This is Billy, the polar bear. If we refresh, we can see this is smaller than this. And we can go down with this as well. We can go to H4 and remember to change the closing tag. And you can see it is getting smaller. So we're going to stick with H2. And let's do some more paragraph text. P. Billy is a very large polar bear. He weighs 500 kilograms. I don't know if that's heavy for a polar bear. And now what we can do is we can wrap this in a strong tag. Now, strong tags, if I just copy this, I'm just going to copy the end tag, cut it out and put it at the end. Now, strong tags are used to, I'm going to say bold text, but that's not exactly correct. If I just now save and refresh, you can see it is bold, but there's actually another tag. So if I go around large here with a B tag, like we saw in the Wikipedia article, I'm just going to cut that end tag and put it around large. You can see large does the same, B does the same thing. Because B used to be what everyone used to use as a bold tag. And now a lot more people use strong. And the reason is because maybe you want to make something strong looking, but it doesn't necessarily have to be bold. it could be a different color, it could be larger. So again, when we style this strong tags with CSS, we could change that. It doesn't necessarily have to be bold. So we're going to leave that in now. Let's carry on our p tag. So I'm going to drop this down as well, just so it's sitting inside our paragraph tag. Yeah, then we're going to create another paragraph tag. And the reason I'm doing this is because if I was to carry on here, so if I was to jump down inside this paragraph tag, say on the next island, there are penguins. Now, this will be on the same line. Look, it's starting again. And that's because we're inside the paragraph tag. It's not detecting that space. Now we can force that. We can force that space. So we can force that with a BR tag, which is a break tag. So BR, and this is self-closing as well. So it has that / and closing bracket. Now this on the next will jump down. Okay, so there you go. BR tags aren't used that commonly now. The correct way to have done this would be, I'm just going to remove that BR tag. If we want this on its own line, I'm just going to cut this out, and I'm going to put it in its own paragraph tag. And as you can see, what that did is gave us space as well above. So if I just right click and inspect, you can see the orange above and below. So what that actually is if I go to computed, you can see here it's 16 pixels of margin. So this is just another thing that we can look at in our dev tools. Right, so let's close that. Okay, so let's have a look at some more tags. So let's say there are tiny penguins, and the word tiny we can wrap in a small tag, right? I'm just going to copy this closing tag and just put it at the other side, and that will give us a small text. Just enlarge again. You can see there. Now, just to make it so we can see the bottom of the page easier, I'm just going to throw a load of those BR tags in here. Just copy this a few times, just to get off the bottom of the page. Okay, cool. Also, we have italics that we can use and emphasize. So let's create another paragraph. The penguins hide from the polar bears because they don't want to be eaten. Okay, let's emphasize this don't. So back in the day, we used to use I tags, and that would emphasize them. You see how it's slightly italic. Today we would actually use EM more commonly, which is emphasize, for the exact same reason that we would use strong instead of bold. It doesn't give a strict name to it, and we can then kind of style it later how we want to do that. Right, so let's make a list. So UL is unordered list, so we can use this for bullet points. There's also ordered list, which we could use for numbered points, so it's an order of a list. So we need to create an unordered list, and each one of these list items lives in here. So we can say, let's give it a title of a H4, food polar bears like. So we're going to say fish. Let's create another li. We're going to say penguins. And we're going to say chocolate. Let's pretend they like chocolate. I'm sure they would. Okay, So if I give this a refresh, you will see we have bullet points created for us and it's slightly indented. If this was to become a numbered list, so H4, oops, get that back, so H4, polar bear priorities. And we're going to say ordered list, and we're going to say list item again. So to eat, chill, again, eat, chill, repeat. Okay, and give that a refresh, and you can see these are now numbered because we've used an ordered list. Okay, so let's do a little link. So maybe we want to link out to that Wikipedia article. So the way we do that is, let's go grab our Wikipedia link from here. And we say A, and again this is a tag that needs an attribute, but it does close like normal tags does. So href is the attribute we need, and we can just paste in our link, close it there, and then we need the text of the link. So we can say polar bear wiki. Save that, we can then see that little link, and it's purple because obviously we've visited it before. So there we go, and we can click and link to that. We can also give it an attribute that lets us open a new window. So rather open, or a new tab, rather opening in the tab we're currently on, we want it to open another tab. And you do that by saying target equals underscore blank. And now if I refresh, if I click on this, it should open a new tab rather than take it over the page. There you go, it's open a new tab. Cool. So now we've done our amazing article about polar bears, and lots of people have understood lots about our polar bears. Actually, our title's a bit misleading, but we'll come back to that later. We probably want a comment section so people can comment on our article. So we're going to create that, but it won't work unless we have a server in the back end to process it. So we create a form element, and again, you can see, I'm just going to get these, it has a close-in tag, and in itself, a form doesn't do anything. So if I save this and refresh, it's actually not there. I can probably inspect this and we can see what's going on. So you can see now all our elements are going along nicely. And there is a form element there, but we have no input fields. So we need to add inputs. And there's lots of different types of inputs, text inputs, email, password, number, dates, some ones we don't really use, range, like a slider. So the link in the description should have all those inputs types for you. So most of them start with input, so it's an input HTML element. Then we would have a type. So we're going to say input of type equals, you can see a load of them here, look, file, email, image. We're going to do input type of text. Then we can close that. And if we save and go there, we can see we have our input field. If you notice, there isn't a closing tag on this. Again, we can put that / in, which is good practice. And that could be for our name, so our user's name who's leading the comment. So let's add a label to our input. So this is going to say name. And if you save that, you can see we have a name. Now what we can do is we can give properties to these, attributes to them. So when we click on the label, it activates the actual input. And the way we do that is we say label for equals name, because this is our label for equals full name, let's say, just so it isn't confusing. And this input is going to be for our full name. So let's give it an ID equals full name. Make sure we don't forget the quotes. Now if I refresh and I click name, you can actually see clicking on the label activates the input field. We can type in it. Okay, so we also want an email. So let's do input. Input type equals email. And this is, if I save this now, it would give us a slightly different layout on things like if you went on your mobile, it would give you a slightly different keyboard layout, including the @ symbol kind of on the first level of the keyboard, so you don't have to go into like the shift mode and stuff like that. Also, if you require validation, you want to check if it's a correct email, you can force HTML to check if it has an @ symbol and things like that. So at the moment, it looks like exactly like a normal input field. We'll create that label. Label for equals email. Oops. Email. And we're going to say email. And of course, we need to add the ID so that it's clickable. ID equals email. And now that is clickable. It's obviously a little off now because there's things called inline elements and block elements. So block elements, like p tags, are block elements. So it doesn't let any other item share its space. So when a paragraph is ended, you can't add another paragraph to the end of it. It goes underneath like we saw, right? Then there's some elements that are inline elements. Now, input fields are inline, so it actually lets it go, and same with label, lets it go on to the next, it lets it continue. It doesn't force it down onto the next line like a paragraph tag would. So you could wrap them in p tags and that would force them down. Or you could wrap them in something called a div tag. I'm going to do this briefly now. So let's wrap the name in a div tag. So I'm going to copy that ending. So div. So just the usual HTML tags. And I'm going to do the same again here. Wrap email in a div tag. I'm just going to shunt it across. I'm using tab to shunt it across. I'm just grabbing it and pressing tab, and that will shunt it across so you have that tree structure so it's easy to follow. Save that. As you can see now, they've dropped down because div elements are block elements. Div is a layout element predominantly, so you can style those divs as well in your CSS, but they have a block layout display type, whereas inputs have inline display type. Strong, small, all these tags like here, this has an inline display type because it lets things follow it on the same line. Okay, same as it's emphasized here. So two different types of display types. There's inline block as well, and perfect timing because we can add a button here for our submit. Okay, so we can do button, a type equals, and there you can see in the menu, submit. So we can then say submit comment. Oh, we actually need to add the text field as well. But as you can see here, if I right click and inspect, the only difference between an input and a, say, display inline block, it says right here, the only difference between inline block and inline is inline block can have, I don't know if it does, yeah, it does a little, it can have margin and padding, where inline can't. You can also force elements to change into other elements in CSS. So say you needed an inline element to have padding and margin, you can force it to be inline block, and then you can do that. Okay, so now we need a big text area for our message. So we're going to say label for equals message. So we're going to make a message field and message here. And the type of area we're going to do is a text area. It's slightly different to inputs, and it actually just is a text area. And you will notice it has a closing tag. So if I save this now, you can see it has its own, and it is resizable. And there's a few attributes on this that you can do, things like rows equals, like you could say you want 3 rows or 23 rows, and you can see how it changes. Okay, so it has a few attributes as well, so it's worth digging around seeing what those are. And if we type in between, we can see this actually appears in the box itself. Different to things like the inputs, where we can have things like placeholder, and we can set things like full name goes here. You can set that in a placeholder. So as I refresh, you can see it's slightly grayed out, and as you click and start typing, it disappears. Okay, so that's placeholder, very common attribute for input HTML elements. Okay, so maybe we want to be contacted about this. So we could put a checkbox there. So this is how we do that. So let's go under our text area and do an input type equals checkbox. And we need a label for this as well. So let's do a label for equals contact me, the contact hyphen me. Then we're going to do an ID on the checkbox that says contact me, and there we go. We have these little thingy. We didn't fill in the actual text, so please contact me. Refresh, and then again it's over here weirdly. So let's force it down without a div tag, with a BR, and you can kind of see how you can start structuring stuff. Oh, where did I put that? I put it after the label, so I want that before the label, after the text area. Save that. I'm just going to get rid of that space, and there you go, we forced it underneath. And then we can force again the button to go underneath. We're kind of doing this with BR tags. Like I said, this isn't the common way to do it. When we start styling things up, we're going to be able to manipulate these elements in a position that we want to go. As in, you can see now, because message is a longer word, the text box doesn't line up with the other text boxes. So this is something we can manipulate in the CSS to kind of get things aligned nicely, right? Now let's say we have 2 options. So we've got the contact me, and let's say we want to be contacted by email or phone number. We'd have to put a phone number in. So let's just copy this email div, and let's do phone number. So for phone, say phone here, and type could be, is there a phone type? No, there's a number type now. So an ID number, and again that would bring up the number pad on your phone instead of bringing up your QWERTY keyboard. So stuff like that is good to have. So I've just saved that, and if I just refresh, you can see we've got a phone number now and these actual little default numbers here. So you can just type in a long number. Okay. So we want to say contact via. So let's do a label. For equals contact hyphen type. How should we? No, this will be contact number. Right. It's like phone. Okay, so we need to do an input with a type equal to radio. Now we need to give it an ID, so it's clickable on contact number like the rest of them. So when we click on the label, it will activate this as well. We save that. You can see we have phone. Do another BR here. So please contact me. So we can click that. And we can click by phone. Now, radio buttons work in a way where it's multiple selections. You can have multiple options, but you can only select one at a time. Checkboxes, you could have multiple options and you can check multiple elements. So let's copy. We're just going to copy and paste this whole phone number and change it to contact email. Email. Type is radio, ID is email. Now, the issue we have here, if I refresh, as you can see, I can select both of them. And that's because both of these radio elements don't know about each other yet. So we need to kind of connect them together. And the way we connect them together is if we go into our inputs, we can add another attribute. And that attribute is name. So name equals contact type, we'll say. This is just things I'm making up. And same for the email. So name equals contact hyphen type. Now if I refresh, I click on phone. When I click on email, it should deselect phone. There you go. So it makes it available so you can only do one of them. So that's the difference between radio buttons. If you had another contact button, we could select both contact. If we had another checkbox, we could select both checkboxes because it's different type. Okay, so it doesn't just read what we've clicked, but it also needs to know what that is. It needs to know what value that is. So for our checkbox, we can say the value of the checkbox is contact. Right? Contact me. So when it gets sent to the server, the value knows this checkbox that has been clicked is the contact me checkbox and not any other. Same with the phone and email. It needs to know which one of these radio buttons is clicked. So we can just say phone, and we can say value equals email. So when it receives it, it will receive the value of email for this radio button. Okay, and the last form element that we're going to discuss is the select tag. Now the select tag is like that drop down list where you can select a menu item. So this is how we write one of those. We use select, and within select we have options. So the next one is option. So let's do favorite animal, I guess. So we want to do a label for the whole of the select. Let's do a label for equals Fav animal. What is your favorite animal? Okay, refresh that. So we just need to drop this down to the next line as well. So let's do ID equals Fav animal, so we can select the input like we have been doing by clicking the label. Fav animal, and we do want this on a new line, don't we? Because it doesn't give it enough space to breathe. And also we're going to put a BR tag before that button at the end. Here we go, and give that a refresh. Okay, so as you can see, there's nothing in this list at the moment. So let's do polar bear. Give that a save, a refresh, and you can see we've got one item in there. So let's copy this option and say brown bear. And we're going to copy it again and say penguin. Let's get rid of that space just by deleting it. Save it. And then when we do this menu, we have these options that we can pick from. Now again, we need to give these options a value, because it doesn't just take the value from the name when it sends it to our server, so when we receive all the data. So it needs to know what the value actually is. So value equals, and we can just do polar hyphen bear, because we can't have spaces in these names basically. Value equals, so every time I've done a hyphen, it's because actually every attribute you can't have a space in the name. So value equals brown bear, and option value equals penguin. Okay, and we can also do a name for our select, just so when it comes in to the server we know what element that was. So say Fav animal name. Okay, that wouldn't have changed a thing. We have our menu. Great, we can select them. So that's how you do a drop down. And actually, if you're interested in further forward being able to style this select option, I'll put a little card in the top corner. Shows you how to style it with CSS, because it's not as straightforward as you think. Okay, so we're looking pretty good here, but I want to separate some of these sections up. So maybe before our form, we just want to differentiate a little bit. So let's scroll up to the top of our form, and we can put in a HR, and this again is self-closing, so it has no closing tag. If we save that, what you can see is it gives us this line. Let's put a couple of BR, so let's do a BR before, oops, let's tab so we get to the same line, BR, and I put a BR afterwards, just for the spacing. That's all we're doing that for. And you can see this line here, and that's a horizontal rule, so it's just a way to break up the page, I guess. Now let's say you want to leave yourself messages in your code that don't display on the web page. We can do that with HTML comments. So let's say you want to tell people that this is where the form starts. You can type triangle bracket exclamation mark hyphen hyphen, and you can see it's automatically closed it. But if it hasn't done that for you, to close it, you would say hyphen hyphen triangle bracket. So I can say form for comments. There you go. So if I give this a refresh, and let's inspect this form now, you can see form for comments is there. It's showing up in the dev tools, in the developer tools, but on the page it doesn't exist. So that's a nice way of leaving comments for you, so you know what's going on the page, or maybe you're working with other developers. Ideally, when it comes to production, you would remove them just so it's not just in the DevTools message. You don't see that very often, basically. Right, so let's say now we want to just end this section here with a little video of a polar bear. So we're going to jump off to YouTube, find a polar bear video, and we're going to embed that video into our HTML. Okay, so I found this video of my polar bear, and so I found this video of my polar bear, and what I'm going to show you now is how to use the YouTube embed feature. So if you go down here, you see the share, and you see this embed here. So we can click embed. It gives us a few options. We can keep them on, and you can copy this whole code here, or you can click this copy button. So let's copy that out. Let's go back to our code, and what we can do is just copy it straight in here, like that. If I save that, give that a refresh, you can see, if I just open this up, the video is there for us to play. And it will play, it will work exactly as it would, right? Now, there's a different way of doing it if we have our own video and we want to host our own video. And that's using the video tag in HTML. So let's just jump back into our code again. So we're just going to delete this iframe here. Just go to refresh. And I've now got a local version of a video. So if I open up here, you can see I've got bear.mp4. So that's what I'm going to use. So as you would expect, video is the tag, and it has a closing tag, and it also has inside video, we can give it sources. So we can give it multiple different videos, and that will help browsers that don't support certain types of videos. For this one, we're going to just give it one type, which is MP4. And the way we do that is we say source, then we give it a source, src this time, and we just say where this is. And you can see it's popped up with the suggestions for me. So we can see bear.mp4, and we can close that. And just like our image tags, it's self-closing. We can add the thing if you want. And we can also tell it what type it is, so the browser knows. So we're saying type equals, and it's video / MP4. This is like a MIME type, we call this. So if I now save that and give it a refresh, we actually have the video here. And we can change the size by giving width to the actual video itself. Maybe we're going to do it down to like 140. And we can also give it a height as well. But just by giving a width, it automatically does the height. So we can stretch it with a height. So if we say height equals also 140, you'll notice it goes to a square. So there's actually, if I inspect here, you can see video. You can see the extra height it's given itself for the video tag. So we want to give controls as well, so we can control it just by putting controls in the video. Give that a refresh, and you can now see we have our little play button. So we will play along like it's doing. So that's the two different types you can have. You can have an embed or a video. So we're embedding from YouTube. Also, we can embed from Vimeo. Vimeo is a good platform, so you don't have to have branding like you have play button from YouTube and stuff like that. So you can do a full width, height website with just a full video. So sometimes you get videos in the background in the header section of a website. That can be hosted on Vimeo. The advantage to embedding from another site is they will control what quality to give you based on the bandwidth you have available. So if your internet is slow, it can give you it won't have to give you a 4K, or 1080p video. It can give you, 360p video because it knows that your bandwidth is not good enough to handle. So that's the advantage of doing an embed from another site. So now let's add a table. Tables are actually how we used to used to lay out websites. When I was younger, when I was like 14, 15, when I first started building sites, tables is how we positioned elements. And it's still common in places like emails and stuff like that. So older sort of ways of doing things, you can actually still do it. But now it's used for tables, basically. So we start with a table tag, and it has its own closing tag. And we have rows and columns. So if we say tr is table row, so we know we're going across, and say we want 2 columns. Say we're going to make a table about our polar bears and how much they weigh. Okay, so we're going to make cells now. And the way you make cells is TD. We're going to come back in a second and show you a different way. So TD, I'm going to say name. That's the name of our polar bear. And the next one, because we're in a row, we're going to do TD. We're going to say weight of our polar bear. Okay, give that a refresh. You see now we have our name and weight. Okay, so we need another table row. So we're going to do a tr. And a table row, we need a table cell, td. And this will be our name. So this is James. And the weight of James. Now, James is a bit puny. And he only weighs, for a polar bear, he only weighs 100 kilograms. He's a very weak polar bear. We give that a save, and we can see that the name James is underneath each other. So it's looking pretty good. Let's do another polar bear. Let's copy this TR here. Let's call this Mike. We're going to have Mike. And Mike's a bit of a fat lad. So Mike is going to be 800 kilograms. So he's a big lad, is Mike. And they can see it's dropped down in the way it should. Now, we actually want name and weight, I guess, to be in a different type of... It's not part of the table contents. So the way we do table header is with a TH. So we still use a table row because it's still table row, but we're going to change TD to TH. Okay. So both on the opening and closing tags. And you see straight away it's got some styling attached to it. Now we can style this so it has the borders around it and things like that in the CSS, because right now it's a bit confusing. We don't have lines, we don't know how they're separated. So that is something that we would do in the CSS later. Okay, so let's look at some more uncommon ones. I don't use these that often anyway. So we could have a quote in here. So let's do a quote just before food polar bears like. Let's find that. So food polar bears like here. So let's do another BR. Give ourselves some space. Let's do a quote. So the way we do this is block quote. Oops, don't need that capital. Block quote. As you can see, it's VS Code has helped us and said, oh, this is not a self-closing, you need to close it. So let's do, I love polar bears. They're great. Okay, let's give that a refresh. If we scroll up, you can see how it's indented itself as well. So it has its own unique styles attached to it as default. Then we can add more if we want to. Now we can add a site to this so we know who said it. So let's do a tag, same as usual, site. And this is going to be David Attenborough. David Attenborough. I guess it's spelled like that. Then if we give it a refresh, you can see David Attenborough, and it's actually got its own italics already. So that is another handy one to use. And we also have an abbreviation tag. So let's go underneath our block quote. And let's do it with in our block quote. I love polar bears. They're great. From the WWF WWF leading researcher, let's call him. And what we're going to do is going to wrap WWF. So I'm just going to, with an ABBR tag, I'm going to copy the end one. And then we need to say what the WWF stands for. So it's a World Wildlife Federation, isn't it? So we just jump in here and add an attribute to the ABBR tag called title equals World Wildlife Federation. Give that a save, refresh. Just skip back up to top. As you can see now, if we hover over it, it tells us with our little pop-up, very small, but you might be able to see it, World Wildlife Federation. Okay, so let's start thinking about finishing up this page of our website. So now we need to have a footer. So let's jump down to the bottom of our code. Just before the body, just before the body, because we're going to get rid of all these, get rid of most of these BR tags now. So just before our body, we're going to create a footer tag. And this is semantic HTML. So a footer tag is no different to a normal div tag. In fact, we have a header tag, which will be at the top of your website, a main tag, which could be the main section of your website. We also have section tags. So if you have maybe a section that's an about section, then a section that's maybe images, then a section that's maybe blogs, you could wrap them in section tags rather than div tag. So it gives the website a little bit more, and things that use the website, so Google, people who are scraping the website, it helps people know what sections actually are, what these things actually are. So footer, it can look for information, maybe your address in the footer and things like that. So okay, a footer tag, and let's do a copyright in here. So we're going to use a paragraph tag and a small tag inside that, and we're going to say copyright awesome blog 2020 now, still in 2020. Then it's just down at the bottom, it's doing nothing special. So maybe we want an address on here as well. So there's another special HTML tag called address. It's not used very often. And within address, you can split the lines down using BRs. So let's do one infinite loop California. I don't know what California, CA 123, I don't know how postcodes work in America, USA. Okay, and after each one of these, we can just do our BR tag just to break that line down. I'm going to copy and paste it, paste. We don't need one at the end. Then let's have a look at that. And now we have a different styled address, and it's given browsers and it's given Google. It lets them know easily where to find our address. So we're going to go up and do our header section now. So like I said before, we can have header, we can have main, we can have footer. There's something called an aside as well. So I'll show you in this diagram here. This is called the holy grail of layouts, where you can have main content, you can have something on the side. You get this a lot with blogs, where it's like recent posts. So that's what we're doing. We're going to make it more semantic. So we're going to jump up to the top now and just make our header section that's going to have some links in it for us. So let's jump up to the very top in our code. So just where the body starts here, we're going to create a header tag. And this is just like our div. It's a block level element. And we're going to just have some links in here. So we're going to say ahref equals, and let's link to another page. So let's link to the page we linked to earlier. So do we have that a tag in here? We do further down. Yeah, so let's just grab this anchor tag, this link tag. Let's copy that, and we're going to move it into the header. So with all the things it's got. So save that, jump to the top. There you go. This is now in a header text, so we can have a link, a couple of links of other stuff. So let's do a penguin link. In fact, let's copy this polar bear link tag from the penguin and just replace the, let's just replace the href with our penguin one. And we're going to say penguin wiki. Refresh. There you go. So this is where obviously on your website you would have your navigation to get to different pages on your personal site. So let's now link to a page, a new page on our site. This is going to be our new about page. So let's create our about page. Let's go into here. I'm going to click new file. I'll say about.html. Now obviously it won't reach this page first because we have the index, but we can link to this page. So we need the same sort of things, HTML. We need a head. Give ourselves a body. And I'm going to say h1 about me. Okay. What else do we need? We haven't filled in any of the head stuff yet, so that's fine. So let's do that. So you notice up here it says index.html. If I go in here and I create a title and I say awesome polar bears and I refresh it, this changes to awesome polar bears. You can just see it there. So this is what I mean about this doesn't appear on the page, but it's useful things. So our about page is going to have a title called about page. Okay, so now we want to link to our new about page. Let's write a little bit more. This page is about my love for polar bears. Okay, so we're just going to jump back into our index, and in our header we're going to do a link, internal link into our new about page. So inside our header we're going to do our href tag, and this time instead of doing a http external link, we can just select about.html, close that off, and we can just do about, just about. That'll do. Save that. If we refresh, we can see we've got a blue link now because we haven't visited this page before, and we can just click about on there, and it's taken us to our new, let's zoom in, our new about page, and we can fill this up with all our about stuff. Again, we can do that with images and stuff like that. If you want to do that to practice, feel free to do it in here. Alright, okay, so that's about it for our content on our pages. And right at the beginning of the video I mentioned that we would jump back up to the top and add a few more things, which is what we're going to do in our head section. So in our index, what we want to do is we want to add a few things. The main one at the moment is our Doctype and Viewports. So let's do a Doctype. And all Doctype is it tells our browser what type of file we are, which is HTML, and which version we're using. So I just copy and paste this. I never have this memorized, so it's not one of those things you need to memorize basically. But all it is at the very beginning, even before HTML tag, you do a triangle bracket, exclamation mark, Doctype, caps, and then HTML, and close it off, and that's it. It just lets the browser know what it's dealing with. So we want to copy that into our about one as well. Let's just chuck it at the top of our about one and give them both a save. It won't really show any difference, so we're just going to go back here to this page. No difference to you at the moment. It's one of those things that's kind of, it's a requirement, but actually it doesn't break anything, especially on your local environment if you don't have it. And now what we're going to do is we're going to do the viewport, and this is important for how mobile devices, maybe tablets, view the sites, and how what kind of zoom it needs to do to get the text working right and all this sort of stuff. So again, it's not one of those things I know off by heart. I always just copy and paste this in, but I will speak it out to you as I do it now. So we're just jumping inside our head tag, and we're going to start with a meta tag, and we've got a few of these to do now, like the description for Google and stuff like that. So this is the viewport one, so we can say meta name equals viewport. So it's basically, what is it? It's a viewport. So content equals quotes width equals device hyphen width, then comma. Oops, I'll spell width correctly. Comma. So it's looking a little bit weird. So it's basically just saying use the device width as your width is what it's saying. Then initial hyphen scale equals 1. So that's then just setting like a zoom level, just so it knows how to do it. This is one of those things where you don't need to touch, you just need to add it, just so different devices can display your page properly, basically. So it's a bit of an odd one, but it's kind of what we have to have. We can also, in this section, set our Fav icon. And the Fav icon is, if you look over here, we still have Visual Studio Code page open and Wikipedia. This little picture, that's your Fav icon. And you set that in your head as well. So as you can, as we said earlier, body is for stuff on the page, head is for all the extra stuff that kind of can go around it. So we're going to get an icon for our page, maybe find some sort of polar bear and add it as a Fav icon. Okay, so we're going to add our Fav icon now. We can just do it underneath our viewport. And Fav icons, there's various different sizes of them. So not only will they appear in the tab on your browser, but if you maybe save a web page onto your phone home screen, that's a different size as well. Default now for browsers is 32 pixels by 32 pixels. I save them as PNG. You can, they will upscale as well. They will upscale for things like the homepage ad, but you can also add multiple different sizes and things like that. We add these with a link attribute, and we tell it basically what relationship it is, which is an icon. And we add a link to this icon. You can see I've got the icon.png there, and we also tell it what type we are. So we are type image/png, and also the sizing. So we have a 32 by 32. Now if we save that, give it a refresh, you can see right there I've got my little polar bear. Wicked. Right. Next things. Meta descriptions for Google. So we can just go straight under here. I'm going to say meta again. I say name equals description. Then we say content equals, and this is whatever we want to show up in Google. So we can say, hi Google, this is my website about polar bears. There is a limit to how many characters Google will let you add onto Google. But actually, in your code, you can add as many as you want, and Google will just cut it off. So that's something to be aware of. Okay, so let's just copy all three of these things. Let's just copy the whole head. Let's copy the whole head, in fact, and put it in our about. And we can keep the same type. We don't need to change it about. Cool, perfect. So now I'm going to mention a few things. So we're using IDs on a few things, right? And mainly to tag and click on labels and have the input field activate. Now, when it comes to CSS and styling things, we can add IDs to everything. Now, for instance, this header. We can say ID equals page header. Now IDs have to be unique on the page. I cannot use page header again on this page. But when we start styling things, I can say page header, or ID page header, make this red, for instance. And with IDs, it lets us use all sorts. So we can use numbers as well. But in CSS, it won't allow us to have things like numbers at the beginning and just like really weird random things in there. So best to stick with, starting with a letter. You can have hyphens, underscores, numbers in there, but always start with a letter is a better practice. Now, classes, so if I had a class equals page header, classes can be used multiple times. So this is actually probably better to go here in these link tags. We can say, we'll do it before the, we'll do it here. Class equals nav link, because it's our navigation link, right? Now I can copy that and add it to each one of these, right? And what I can then do is I can style those navigation links here by just using one command. I can style them using navlink as their name in our CSS. So don't worry if this is going over your head a little bit because we haven't looked at CSS, but effectively I don't have to go in style this link, this link, this link. I can style the name of the links, the link class, and it applies to them all that have that class. So I can make this blue, I can take away the underline, etc., etc. So if I want to style some things now, for instance, let's say I want this title to be blue. I can jump in here, create a style attribute on the H1, and I can say color blue, color colon blue, like that. Save it and go back, and it's gone blue. And this is effectively kind of what we have in CSS. We do the thing we want to change, colon, then what we want to do. So then we can also go, we can also say, all these things getting in my way now, semicolon, font size, and I can do like 12 pixels. And you see it's gone really small because I'm adjusting size. So we can keep chaining these in the style, and this is kind of the old way that we used to have to do it. We used to go in and have to style them individually. Now that doesn't work. If we want to do these nav links, we don't want to have this big long style tag for each one. So what ended up happening with CSS is, I'm just going to delete the space, we ended up adding an external page, an external style sheet that we can link to our main document. And the way we do that is like this. So we're going to go underneath our meta description, and we're going to say link rel equals, so we're telling it what kind of thing it is, style sheet, and then we need to give it a location with href. And we don't have this style sheet at the moment, so I'm just going to actually say style.css. Then I'm going to close that, and we're going to go create that now. So if I jump over to our thing here, new file, style.css, and what we can do, so let me remove all this, I'm going to close that thing, remove all this style we put in. So we just go back to normal, okay? So if I refresh, we're back to black. Now in style, what we can do, we can say h1 color, and we're using squiggly brackets, so h1 squiggly brackets, then we just drop a line, color blue, and the semicolon to finish it. Save that and refresh, you can see it's gone blue. So this is a much neater way, and if there was any other H1s, this is H2, they would go blue. So we can do that on the tags, the HTML tags, but there's hierarchy with things. So it's best to style as much as you can on classes. We can style on IDs, but IDs are mainly for JavaScript. Because what can happen if you start styling on IDs, it's a more specific tag. So if you've got a class on there and an ID and you're trying to overwrite some style on the ID, classes won't do it because classes are less specific than an ID. So try to do everything on a class. So we've got these nav links now. So let's style a nav link. Dot nav hyphen link. I'm going to use those curly brackets again. I'm going to say color red. Save that, refresh. Nav link. Save that, refresh. You can see they've gone red. All of them have gone red. And we haven't had to do it on the A tag. So these other anchor tags down here, this one hasn't done it. If I was to do it on an anchor tag, refresh, that too would go red, as well as these, right? So by styling on this on a class, you can determine which elements you want to use. So in the next video, guys, we're going to dig deep into CSS, show you what you can do with it, show you how you can bring websites to life. That'll be a really interesting video. And thanks for watching, guys. Feel free to subscribe and like, that really helps me out. And if there's something you might want a video on, leave it in the comments. I'll see if we can get around to it. But until the next video, guys, thanks a lot, and I will see you soon.